How did this happen? It all started with Abraham Flexner. In 1910, he wrote a very influential report called the Flexner Report. He went around the United States, and it took him a long time to do this. There were stagecoaches and trains, no cars, only telegraphs. He went all around the United States and he did an inventory of medical schools and brought back a list of who he considered the medical schools that were the true centers of medical research, i.e. the allopath. Now, early 20th century in the United States, it was more of an equal playing field with different types of medical professionals. You had the chiropractors, you had the osteopaths, you had the homeopaths, you had the naturopaths, and you had the allopaths, right? And they were all competing for patients. He brought the list back to the Rockefeller Foundation. And after the Flexner Report, the Rockefeller Foundation gave vast sums of money to the medical schools that taught prescription medicine. All right? So now listen. And this was big money back then. This was the turning point in the evolution of medicine in the United States. This is the main reason why MD-directed allopathic reductionistic medicine is the top dog now, and everybody else is subservient to it. It's got nothing to do with medical efficacy. It's got nothing to do with cost-effectiveness of treatment. It has everything to do with political and financial affiliations that were built at the turn of the century that most people have no idea of. As an example, in the early 1900s, there were 22 homeopathic medical schools, just as an example. We're not talking about the chiropractors or the osteopaths, just the homeopaths now. 100 homeopathic hospitals and 1,000 homeopathic pharmacies, and the medical schools were in places like BU, Stanford, New York Medical College. I mean, this was all top-notch stuff, right? 22 homeopathic medical schools in the early 1900s. By 1920, which was 10 years after the Flexner Report, the last pure homeopathic medical school closed. Why? Because everybody followed the money. If you're starting a business and I'm starting a business and you get $1 million of free money and I don't, who's going to have a better business? You are. So after 1910 in the United States, if you wanted to practice medicine, are you going to go to the poor homeopaths or the poor naturopaths or the poor chiropractors, or are you going to go to the big institutions that have all the money? That's where you're going to go. And that's how this whole thing started, and that's why we're in the predicament that we're in today. And very few people understand this or have any appreciation for it. Number two, if you're going to be the top dog, in addition to getting all the money, you want to slander the competition, right? The AMA found guilty of slander. Most people don't know this. In 1984, a very famous case, Wilkes versus the AMA. The federal court found the American Medical Association guilty of a 10-year slander campaign against the chiropractors. And they were ordered to pay $25 million, which is peanuts. So for 10 years, the AMA was going around saying, hey, if you let chiropractors into your state, they're going to sleep with your daughters, sleep with your dogs, and they're going to kill you. And it's going to be bad. They're quacks. For 10 years, slandered the competition. It gets worse. We're going to slander against them, and then we're going to legislate against them also. There's a branch headed by the AMA. It's run by an anesthesiologist in Florida. The department's job description is to make it difficult, if not impossible, for naturopaths to get licensed. We've been trying to get licensed in Massachusetts for 18 years. Have not been able to do it. As a naturopathic doctor in Washington State and 14 other states in the United States, I can deliver babies, perform minor surgery, prescribe drugs, order any diagnostic test I want, call myself a physician, work in hospitals, and it's all covered by insurance. Pretty great. If I was to do exactly the same thing in Illinois, where I now live, or Massachusetts, I'd be fined $5,000 and sent to jail for 2 years. Now, how is this possible? All I did was cross the state line. I did 4 years pre-med, 4 years naturopathic medical school, 1,000 hours of clinical supervision, pass national boards, pass state boards, and do 25 hours of continuing education credit every year. I can run circles around any medical doctor in this country when it comes to physiology, anatomy, and clinical nutrition. And yet, I'm only allowed to practice medicine in 15 states in the United States. Why? Because the AMA goes around the country telling people, whoa, If you let naturopaths into your state, they're going to sleep with your daughters, sleep with your pets, and they're going to kill you. It's an aggressive campaign against everybody else. This is how they do it. I'm not making this stuff up. I couldn't make this stuff up. It's too crazy. Number 4, it gets worse. If I want to dominate the practice of medicine and culturally inoculate people to believe that my medicine is the king, I fix the facts in my behalf. How do I do that? Richard Smith, 25-year editor of the British Medical Journal, when he retired, he was quoted as saying, "Medical journals are just an extension of the marketing departments of major drug companies." This was the editor of the journal. Well, maybe it's just one guy and he had an axe to grind, right? Richard Horton, editor of The Lancet, which is one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. When he retired, medical journals have devolved into information laundering operations for the pharmaceutical industry. You want some examples? Fasten your seatbelts. Cancer. This is the worst slide. This is the saddest slide I've got. I can barely read this without crying. The Journal of Clinical Oncology, Volume 16, Issue 8, December 2004. It was called The Contribution of Chemotherapy to 5-Year Survivals. This study was done to see how effective chemotherapy was for cancer that you got if you were an adult. Okay? It was based on data from randomized controlled trials published over a 14-year period. So they looked at all these treatments for chemotherapy for all these people that gotten cancer for 14 years. And this was their conclusion, published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology. This is not some backwater naturopathic journal. Preeminent cancer journal in the United States. Fasten your seatbelts. 97% of all chemotherapy for adult onset cancer is ineffective. There's a 3% error ratio, which means the chemotherapy is 100% ineffective at making people well. 100% ineffective for making people well. And yet, it persists. Cancer Treatment Centers of America, perhaps the most pernicious organization on the face of the planet, they have the audacity to hire naturopathic doctors to work there, and then they advertise themselves that, oh, if you come to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, you will have the best holistic medicine there is. But they don't use naturopathic medicine to treat cancer. They use naturopathic medicine to clean up the side effects of chemo, radiation, and surgery. So if you have radiation or chemo or surgery and you get bad nausea, or you get a very bad skin condition, or you get very bad diarrhea, or you can't swallow anything, they use naturopathic therapies to help ease the burden. Now that's, better to do that than not to do that, but they're not using naturopathic medicine to treat cancer. And 97% of their treatments are ineffective. However, it costs approximately $45,000 for one chemo treatment. Most people need 5. If you just have 200 patients a month, most people have 10 times this. It's $45 million a month in profit. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Chemotherapeutic drugs are the only classification of prescription medicine that the oncologist or the doctor that prescribes it gets a cut of. So if I'm Cancer Treatment Centers of America or any other cancer treatment place in the United States and I buy cisplatin for $500 from Canada, I sell it to the patient for $5,000, their insurance pays me $4,000, and the doctor gets a percentage of that for every single solitary prescription that he writes. And this is why it persists. Now listen, if Ford or Chevy made an automobile which blew up 97% of the time it was driven off the lot, how long would they be in business? They wouldn't be. We wouldn't put up with this in any other business, but we put up with this because it's the gorilla in the room that nobody sees. We all need to collectively snap out of it, but it gets worse. Cholesterol. There have been no studies published anywhere that show any relationship between heart disease and cholesterol, period. Let me say that again. There have been no studies published anywhere that show any relationship between high cholesterol and heart disease. It does not exist. As a matter of fact, just the opposite does. A study done at the University Hospital Toronto showed that men with high cholesterol or low cholesterol were equally likely to have a second heart attack. More than 20 studies have shown that the degree of how clogged your arteries are has got nothing to do with your diet. A Canadian study followed 5,000 men for 12 years and could not find a link between high cholesterol and heart attacks. 5,000 men for 12 years could not find a link between high cholesterol and heart attacks. In Honolulu, they looked at 8,000 people and said, you can't read the slide here, the long-term persistence of low cholesterol actually increases your chance of death. Actually increases your chance of death. Actually increases your chance of death. Follow the money. How can this be happening? In 2004, 36 million statin prescriptions, which gave Lipitor. Pfizer, 13 billion, that's billion with a B. $13 billion, $600 million in profit, and that's why they do it. So they generated an illness which is fictional, and they came up with a drug for it which is real, and they make $13 billion a year selling it to us. It's the gorilla in the room that nobody's looking at. Now, cholesterol is so important to the body that your liver makes 6 times as much as you can get from your food. 85% of your brain by weight is cholesterol. 85% of your brain by weight is cholesterol. All your sex hormones are made from cholesterol. All the estrogens, progesterone, dihydroepiandrosterone, cortisol, it's all made from cholesterol. So, if we're driving cholesterol into the gutter with statin drugs, as the cholesterol levels lower, the brain dries up. Alzheimer's disease has gone from the 6th to the 5th most prominent illness in the country right now, and erectile dysfunction all of a sudden is a big deal. Why? Because you need cholesterol to make testosterone. If you don't have any testosterone, you can't get an erection. And also, you know, your grandmother, when she went through menopause, she had 2 or 3 months of hot flushes and mood swings, and that was it. Most women in this country, it's 3 or 4 years of horror. Now, why? Because you don't have enough cholesterol. This is exactly the same reason why anorexic teenage girls stop getting their periods, because they have no body fat. They have no body fat, they have no cholesterol. They have no cholesterol, they can't make estrogen or progesterone, they can't get a period. Because cholesterol is vitally important to the health of the body. As a matter of fact, and this is on Longevity's website, by the way, there was a study published about a year ago. It showed that the higher the level of butyric acid in the blood, the less your Alzheimer's symptoms are. You know what butyric acid comes from? Butter! We've been fed a bill of goods from medical doctors that have absolutely no appreciation and no training in clinical nutrition. And we've taken it hook, line, and sinker. It gets worse. If I want to dominate, completely dominate the culture of medicine in the United States, in addition to doing everything we've just done, we also do direct-to-consumer ads. Direct-to-consumer ads increased drug sale profits in 2008 by $30 million. This is the nonsense that you see on TV every night, right? Why are they advertising prescription drugs? So you can tell your doctor what you need. Well, too bad they wasted all that money on medical school, right? But we've come to kind of accept this. Oh, you know, you see it so many times and you don't even think about it anymore. But it works to the tune of $30 million a year. It gets worse. Feel comforted? I trust my own heart to Lipitor. This is Robert Jarvik, the guy that invented the artificial heart. He trusts his own heart to Lipitor even though there's no study published anywhere that shows any relationship between cholesterol and heart disease. This man should be sent to jail for fraud. He's a medical doctor. He has standing in the community. It's his job to provide us with accurate information that we can use to help ourselves get better. And he's either been lied to or he's stupid and doesn't know any better, and there ought to be a law. It gets worse. Vioxx. Dorothy Hamill. Oh, yeah, you know, my knees are so bad because I haven't taken calcium in 20 years and I drink Diet Pop between my sessions, but I'm going to take Vioxx. Federally approved drug, $60 million of federally funded research went into that baby, and it killed 20,000 people. Now it's taken off the market. Now listen, if one naturopathic doctor or one chiropractor was to kill one patient with an herb, what do you think would happen? Yeah, it'd be all over the morning news. They'd be pilloried in the town square, and it would be bad. But these people get away with murder every day, and we just go about our business. It's the gorilla in the room that nobody's looking at. It gets worse. So another thing that we can do is we can secure all the medical research money. Now, when the Hoosiers do a run to outrun cancer, and when Ralph does a kick in the cancer 5K walk for Run for Cancer, and this is the other Hoosier thing, oh, it's the 10th one. They've done this 10 times now, 10 years in a row. Where does the money go? Does the money go to naturopathic cancer research? Does the money go to homeopathic cancer research? Does the money go to clinical nutrition cancer research? No! The money goes to MD-directed pharmaceutical allopathic cancer research that's 97% ineffective. What are we doing? We need to snap out of it. I'm going to get a biplane with a big banner on it. And I'm going to fly it over all these 5K runs. You're throwing money into a dead hole. You've been lied to. And then I'd go to jail. It gets worse. One more thing that I can do if I want to dominate the culture of medicine in the United States is not only am I going to advertise to the unassuming public, I'm going to advertise directly to medical doctors. Last year, drug companies spent $20 billion marketing directly to doctors. That's $50,000 per doctor. This means the drug rep shows up at the doctor's office and gives him all these free samples, gives him all this free literature, gives him all this free support, lunch. And then if they sell 1,000 prescriptions, he sends them to Cancun, right? To the tune of $50,000 a year. The medical doctors, they're too busy. They just believe that these guys are telling them the truth, even though the editors of the medical journals have said that they're lying. But nobody can really wrap their head really around that idea, even though it's the truth. Oh, what do you mean the earth is round? You got to be crazy. The earth is flat, for goodness sake. This is how this persists. It gets worse. If I'm a medical doctor, I have to practice inside of a scope of practice. The scope of practice is a set of rules and regulations that I have to follow. Guess who writes the rules and regulations? Medical doctors that are financially linked to drug companies. It gets worse. More than half of the medical experts hired by the FDA to advise them on the safety of medical treatments have financial relationships with drug companies. They've cooked the books. They've completely dominated. This is like a military operation. They have completely dominated every facet of the culture as it relates to medicine. They've even dominated the medical doctors themselves, and they don't know it, which is a tragedy.